Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to this afternoon's Mailers Hub webinar. We have folks still coming into the hall, taking their seats, so we'll get started in about a minute. So just hang tight, and we'll be back to you shortly as soon as everybody is in place. Thanks. Okay, good afternoon, folks. Welcome again to this afternoon's Mailers Hub webinar. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock, so we'll be starting shortly here. Before we do, I just want to remind you that we are who we are. We're the only national organization exclusively serving the commercial mail producer community, whether you happen to be a mailer who prints or a printer who mails. Our purpose is to help you by providing you with information, training, and support on all your postal stuff. And of course, we also like to branch out into some things of business interest once in a while as well. So today's presentation is going to be talking about the leadership series and a new playbook for personal and organizational success. Our speaker today is Ken Garner, and Ken has had a lot of experience coaching senior executives and has faced significant challenges, or has dealt with the significant challenges facing executives and the organizations they lead. So over time, he's seen more than just common threads. He's found repeating and high-risk patterns. And some of those patterns have led him to develop the Peak Performance Series, which is built to manage an unprecedented combination of factors, creating the need for a very different method to build effective organizations. And heaven knows in today's business environment, doing that is important. The slides, if you'd like to have a copy, are in the chat. The link is in the chat. You can go ahead and click on that and get yourself a copy. The recording of the webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be available to our subscribers after a day or so until it gets itself all in place. So meanwhile, I think we've covered all the upfront stuff. So Ken, I will turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Leo, and thank you so much, Michelle, for all the work that you've done in putting this together. And I welcome everyone and thank you for investing some time here today. The purpose of today's session will be to provide kind of an overview for you, a preview of the balance of the sessions here. And again, all of this is about developing sustained business success. And at least from my perspective and from the perspective of much research that's been done and data that's been collected, there's a strong indication that the kind of approaches to management and leadership that perhaps were prevalent when I was coming up and perhaps some of you were coming up, that playbook is no longer relevant and not the type of playbook that's going to deliver the success that we all want. So if we can get to the next slide, we'll get right into looking at some of the background here. And so the next couple of slides are going to deal with a combination of things that, in my opinion, are necessary for sustained business success. And some of them are going to be very familiar to you because being in the mailing printing industry, you're manufacturers. And so you understand much about the complexity of the world of manufacturing and what's required. So typically in my experience, one of the top of mind issues for almost all manufacturers was to have the right best-in-class hardware and software. In other words, the best tools to get the job done. Manifested in capital expenditure budgets, CapEx budgets. And so often much of the business planning process was engaged in really researching and looking at what are the best tools? What's the best iron and steel that we need here? And accompanying that iron and steel are there software applications that could help us make that investment in CapEx as efficient as possible. In addition to that, business strategies, practices, and processes that attract and retain the best customers. And so anything that we can develop in terms of a practice or a structure or a delivery that enables us to at least meet and more preferably exceed customer expectations are the types of things that we have traditionally been very comfortable in investing in. The next thing is attracting and retaining the best, the brightest, the actively engaged employees to optimize those capital investments that we made and effectively execute the strategies that we developed. And this is where I really want to focus and where most of the focus of this series exists, in the sense that we've always referred to our human resource side, those employees that we have, as our most important assets. But in practice, they've not always enjoyed the same level of focus or investment as equipment and software and some of the strategies that we engage in. So I'm going to make a case for looking at elevating that focus and at least making it an active and equal partner to the focus on equipment and software and strategies. Kind of summarizing some of this is a little blurb here that I wrote about enlightened leadership, where I'm saying here that enlightened leadership creates and maintains outstanding organizational cultures. Enlightened leadership develops missions and visions that inspire and motivate, creates strategies and tactics that positively differentiate and deliver superior customer and stakeholder experiences. That's quite a mouthful, but there are a couple of key words here that I want to go back and review, okay? One is inspiration. And I have to say that as I was coming up in the industry, working on the shop floor and moving up into some management and leadership roles, inspiration was never really something that we thought about. But today's workers are looking for organizational cultures and leaders that inspire. And it requires us to kind of think differently in terms of this relationship between labor and management. The other thing that I think is important here is the last part of that sentence that says deliver superior customer and stakeholder experiences. This idea that we need to go beyond satisfying the expectations of shareholders, which has principally been the overriding focus, particularly for publicly traded companies, but also incorporate the needs and expectations of stakeholders as well. And we'll get into more detail about that a bit later. So if we can move to the next slide. Continuing kind of a consideration of the recipe for sustained success and the elements in that recipe. Again, I'm making the case for a greater investment and a sustained investment and a focus on, again, what we've always called our most important asset, including as leaders, our own well-being and updated management approaches. Part of what I'm talking about here in the future sessions is going to have to do with well-being, both personal well-being and organizational well-being. The premise being, first of all, based on research, we are not well. We're not well collectively. And I'll provide all the data related to the elements of stress and how that's impacting the workforce in a variety of ways that are not positive. And if we're not healthy and we're not well, we can't bring our best to the workplace every day, either as leaders or as anyone who plays a role in an organization. Talk a little bit about the causes of this stress. And it's summarized in an interesting way, this acronym VUCA. It really is an acronym that was coined by the military to kind of summarize today's world environment, okay? VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think it's a very accurate kind of characterization of this time in history where we're confronted with unprecedented challenges that impact both our personal and organizational well-being. Let me balance that by saying we also have an unprecedented number of opportunities as well. So we have to do our best to position ourselves to be resilient to the challenges, but also leverage them and capitalize on those to optimize our opportunities. Part of the difference between yesterday and today is the composition of the workforce and the structure of the workplace. It's different than it's ever been, and because it's different, just on the face of it, it requires a new leadership playbook. Let's take a look at some of the things that represent this difference. You know, again, now we have obviously hybrid work environments. We have some organizational members that are working from home, some working in the office, some spending 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, back and forth. We have teams that are divided in some cases between hybrid workers and those who are in the office full time. We have leaders trying to make sense of how we're going to structure the workplace today and in the future, as workers who got used to working from home during the COVID period are resisting, in some cases, the desires of leaders to bring them back to the workforce. And interestingly enough, some members of the workforce who are now saying, I really do. I would welcome an opportunity to return. So it's complex. It's a kind of a mix and mingled kind of world here. We also have the rise of the contract worker in the emerging gig economy, where organizational leaders have, in some cases, replaced full-time employees with 1099 contract workers who bring specific areas of expertise. And that enables the organization to leverage that expertise, tap into that expertise without all of the combined expenses around the compensation involved for a full-time worker. Certainly, there are many industries right now where we have a shortage of workers, and particularly on the service side, can't seem to find enough warm bodies to get positions filled. I mentioned before, we have the emergence of teams as a preferred way to organize employees. It seems that that is the structure du jour, and team management, team leadership, the way in which we organize and we work to kind of optimize the performance of teams requires a new set of skills and a new perspective from the standpoint of management and leadership. We've seen a rise of unionization here recently, which tells an interesting story about the relationship between labor and management. I'm not going to editorialize here too much, but I've always felt that it's kind of a shame when there is a need for a third party to arbitrate between positions between labor and management. But it would seem to suggest that there is a breakdown in that relationship and some work that needs to be done. We also have a workforce that is more diverse than it's ever been before. It's more ethnically diverse. It's more diverse in terms of age. We've got, in some cases, 4, maybe 5 generations of workers, each with its own unique set of career wants, needs, and expectations. And so as we're looking at that workforce with still some baby boomers that are still making it happen, God bless them, and then a whole mixture of millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, and others and all of them require, there's not a one size fits all here approach to leadership of that diverse workforce. It's going to take some customization in terms of our approach. There is an emergence in the interest in well-being, because as the data that I'll present in future sessions will tell us that we're not well as a workforce, we're not well as a society. But the good news is that there's a process and there's a recipe and there's remedies for this challenge to our well-being. And it requires that we're disciplined in some practices that I'll share as we move forward. The importance of organizational purpose that extends beyond shareholder value. I kind of lightly touched on that before. First of all, organizational purpose is really kind of become more top of mind, particularly for younger workers. They want to work in organizations that certainly pay attention to the bottom line, certainly pay attention to that balance sheet. They understand that there's no mission without margin. But what they're looking for is to work for organizations who are committed to creating value beyond the P&L and beyond shareholder value, and with a focus on stakeholder value. And we'll talk a little bit about that in future sessions in terms of looking very quickly at B corporations and maybe even looking at something called the Davos Manifesto, which is a very, very unique kind of perspective in terms of the purpose of business organizations today. So if we can get to the next slide, please. All right, kind of what we're going to cover in this series. And this is in no particular order here, but it's typically an order that I kind of prefer because there is a sequence in this. And the first session, I won't say the first session, but one of the sessions is a focus on personal well-being. And as I said before, there's been a real increase in interest in well-being because of the manifestation of the absence of it, which creates really significant costs to organizations, and creates a real challenge that we need to be conscious of and be intentional around fixing. So we'll look at the introduction of the concepts of well-being. We'll talk about the definitions of resilience and thriving. And certainly resilience is an important kind of competency skill that we need to develop, because that's what enables us to overcome some of these challenges, some of these setbacks on a personal level, and also on an organizational level. As I've said, we'll review research and data related to the value and benefits of well-being and an outline of potential plans to grow well-being and resilience. In other words, I'll provide essentially a plan, a specific set of steps that you can review and either adopt or customize to your own use. But again, it's not just about talking about it conceptually, but also outlining a set of practices that will lead to greater levels of resilience, well-being, and thriving. And so from there, we could potentially go to organizational well-being. Most of the time, and some of these concepts I deal with the personal level and then go organizational. As Stephen Covey said in his book, 7 Habits, we work from the inside out, and that's part of the way in which I've organized the series. Organizational well-being, this is a data-driven review of problematic low employee engagement. If you're not aware of it, the Gallup research indicates that only about 32% of the US workforce is actively engaged in their work. Think about that. Let me repeat that. Only about 3 out of 10, maybe 4 out of 10 at best, are actively engaged. 17% are actively disengaged. This is the group that is very toxic to your organization, very toxic to your culture. And can do great damage to not just the relationships inside your organization, but the customer relationships as well. And then there's this big body in between actively engaged and actively disengaged, which is frankly maybe kind of characterized as quiet quitting. But that's the side that we really need to focus on and work on. As this says, it's data-driven. Each presentation I do will begin with what I call a business justification, because some of these things I almost envision some eye rolling from hardened old guys like me, who, when something like meditation is mentioned, will have a tough time kind of accepting that concept. But understanding that, I preface each and every presentation with what I think is a pretty strong return on investment and business justification based on data and based on research. Personal purpose. This is something like in the same category as well-being that really has begun to kind of rise to the surface in consideration and awareness among organizations and people. And it plays such a critical role in not just personal satisfaction, but also just the health. And I'll present all the data that connects the dots between a sense of understanding your purpose, of crafting your purpose, being responsible for creating your purpose in a desirable way, but also your health, your physical health as well, and the impact between the two. And like I did in personal well-being, I'll even provide some steps that will enable people to provide an outline to develop and craft your own personal purpose. Very, very important here. And I can tell you that a number of my clients, we spend an awful lot of time in that because working or living in a way that's not in alignment with your personal purpose is not a prescription for longevity. Uh, we'll go to organizational purpose, just as we went from personal well-being to organizational well-being. We'll go from personal purpose to organizational purpose. And in that, we'll review the value that a well-defined organizational purpose plays in attracting and retaining top talent. Again, the younger generation of workers out there, they're going to be looking at this purpose. They're going to want to understand how it's articulated, okay? Why the company exists, okay? Let me back up a little bit. I've written this several times and shared this several times. It's not original with me. This is actually attributed to Mark Twain, but he allegedly said that the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. Okay, and if you begin to connect that with the work that Simon Sinek did in terms of start with why, it's just such an important consideration that we'll spend 2 sessions here looking at it at the personal level and the organizational level, why the organization exists and what value it creates beyond the need to create profit. And so we'll review the importance of defining the why behind missions and visions and talk about the difference between missions and visions and why they're being resurrected in terms of their sense of importance. And also a session that I think is really key, which is stop managing, start coaching. And this is kind of a summation of kind of what I've led into here. Management and leadership competencies need to be upgraded to match unprecedented challenges and opportunities, okay? And for all the reasons that I described on the previous slides, the level of complexity, the level of ambiguity, the level of uncertainty, all those kinds of things that we wake up to every day, we boot up our browser and we get this review of things that frankly some people just need to tune out of because they are triggers to enormous stress, divisiveness, anger, frustration, all the things that are not the types of things that lead to good performance, either individually or organizationally. One of the realities here that data suggests is that the manager has the greatest impact on employee engagement and customer satisfaction. Okay, this is a critically important role in organizations. And in fact, it's sometimes the management competency and skill and capability is attributed to whether an organization will succeed or not succeed. There's a lot of research that suggests that it's squarely in the hands of managers today. But the world of a manager today is far more challenging than it's ever been. Some of the reasons being what I shared on the previous slides in terms of a workforce that is multi-generational, a workforce that's often divided between some in the operation, some outside the operation. You've got 1099s that are part of the organization. You got a lot of complexity here that managers have to come to terms with. And the fact of the matter is, at least in my history and experience in manufacturing, particularly for smaller organizations, managers were often promoted from within, from the workforce, and the chief qualification to become a manager was the skill that was applied in doing a particular task. Okay, and so just for example, if I had a head pressman that was really outstanding, and we're looking for a pressroom manager, that head pressman became the immediate candidate and often was the one that was elevated to manage. Not necessarily ever given much in terms of development or any attention in terms of understanding what would be required to be a manager as opposed to a head pressman. It often resulted in companies losing their best skilled task masters and becoming managers without preparation. It was made even more complex by many managers wind up being the boss of people that they used to be colleagues of. And that's a real tough challenge to suddenly be the boss of guys that you used to, of people that you used to be like equals in the same kind of workforce. So very, very important, but there's a whole different set of competencies and skills now that managers have to have in terms of how they manage their direct reports, how people are held accountable, how performance is measured, and how engagement needs to be increased. Again, when we think about the fact that somewhere between only 3 and 4 out of every 10 US employees is actively engaged, the cost associated with that is great, and we can't reach the kind of potential that we have. We can't optimize our potential unless we increase that employee engagement, and there is a direct correlation between employee engagement and customer satisfaction. So, and I think that last sentence will discuss the need to provide managers with higher levels of training and support. So, in a nutshell, very, very briefly, as an overview of the sessions that will be part of what Mailers Hub is sponsoring here, I'm hopeful that there are things here that you'll find enticing enough, intriguing enough, and attractive enough to continue to invest your time. Now, knowing that everybody is busy and that people may not be able to have concentrated periods of time, they're all recorded and you have availability to them if you're a member of Mailers Hub to review at your leisure. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay, just to wrap this up, while the challenges to sustain successes are substantial, we also enjoy unlimited opportunities. We always have to remember that there is kind of a balance here. While the challenges are significant, the opportunities are great right now. But leveraging those opportunities for success is going to require, in my opinion, rethinking and re-engineering past practices. And the series kind of lays this foundation for optimizing, again, both personal success and organizational success, and the potential to combine with well-considered CapEx decisions where we've excelled in the past as organizations and excelled in operational management and sales growth that we've done a good job of in the past. Now we're going to turn our focus and attention to the most important asset, which is our best and brightest top talent that we are going to attract and retain in our organizations. So last slide here. Leo will try to convince you that that is my high school graduation picture. I won't really kind of confirm or deny that. I'll just reserve comment on that. But if you've got any kind of questions at this point, anything that you need some clarification around, we'll be happy to provide that. And we'll also provide, after this is over in the coming days, the schedule for the remaining sessions. So Leo or Michelle, do we have some questions or comments that we need to address?
We had a couple of folks that were very complimentary of seeing you and the content. That's a good thing. And no, and I will qualify, that is your high school graduation picture, but you graduated from high school when you were 56.
Yes.
So,
well, yeah, I wasn't always considered to be the sharpest guy and the fastest guy, but
that's
I
right.
was very, very kind of persistent and wore some of the instructors out. So they finally said, let's pass him on.
Just that's right. Upward promotion. As Ken was saying, there will be additional sessions here that we're going to be announcing soon, and those will be late next month for anyone who wants to plan ahead and be part of it. Obviously, his content is going to be something which is very relevant in today's workplace, very relevant as we have generational change in industry, whether it's commercial mail production or making soda bottle. Anything. Production is production, management is management, and a lot of things have to be learned and relearned and taught and developed anew. The one thing I thought was very interesting that you made, the comment that you made, was about people who are promoted from within. Now, as I think most folks know, I had a long career in the Postal Service, and it's very common there to promote from within. People who were but as you said, Ken, people who were very good at their particular craft were the ones who were put up to the next level. And if you're a carrier or a clerk, your work ethic that got you promotion does not necessarily translate to your subordinates now. And it's very difficult to motivate people that you used to work with to work as you did when you were one of them. So that kind of really rang a bell there, because it's something that I've seen to be problematic over and over again. And I suspect that many of our attendees today have wrestled with the same question. So it'll be something you'll be dealing with in the next session. So I think I don't see just more disgusting praise and compliment, which I don't think you're going to. I don't want to make you embarrassed. So let's just say that people liked it. It was very well received. We hope to have them all back for the late April sessions, as you're going to be scheduling. And until then, I want to thank you for doing today's presentation. I want to thank Michelle for helping, and all of you who called in today, who signed up to watch the seminar, the webinar. And that would be the first of many people, the first of many chances, I hope, for people to see and to hear what you have to offer. So again, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks to all of you out there. And until we talk again next, let's see, what is the next webinar? Is April 16th, when I suspect we're going to be talking about a price change. We'll look forward to seeing everybody then. So again, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay out of the hot sun. Bye.